what's up everyone? This is MusicTechHelpGuy, and in this video I'm going to give you a sort of beginner overview of different types of drum grooves in terms of their feel, meaning how are the notes subdivided on the grid to produce different types of grooves or different types of feels. When I build drum patterns, I think of three main types of patterns: straight feel patterns, swing patterns, and triplet patterns. Now, there are a lot of different grooves that you can build that are genre specific, where they place the snare drum in different locations or there's different instrumentation. That's not what I'm talking about here. In general, all drum grooves tend to be straight, swung, or triplet grooves. And I'm going to break that down for you in this video. Now, typically you want all of the other musical elements in your project to line up with the drums. So you have an interlocking groove throughout your song where all of the notes sort of align on the grid or sometimes off the grid. So this is why it's so important to determine what type of groove you're building up front so you can make all of the instruments follow that groove. So first, let's start off with a straight feel or a straight groove. Right now I'm in 4/4 time, 120 BPM. I've just got a stock Logic kit pulled up here, and I'm going to create a new pattern region here. And by default, in the step sequencer, all of the notes are 16th notes. So if I were to build like a 4 on the floor pattern, this is the most basic, common type of straight feel groove. If I were to add 8th notes to it, we'd call these straight 8th notes. Or if we add some extra 16th notes in there, this is still a straight feel groove. So no matter what I add to the grid here, as long as I'm staying on 16th notes and 8th notes, this is a straight feel groove because the beat is subdivided into groups of 2 or groups of 4s, or some combination of both. Let's stagger the kick a bit. Let's pull the tempo down a bit. I'll go with like 85, and I'm just gonna go with straight 16th note hi-hats, and I'll do something like this. Still a straight feel groove because, again, we're just subdividing the beat into 16th notes and 8th notes. If I take out some of these 16th notes, it's just straight 8ths instead of straight 16ths. We could even repeat some of these notes in 2s, just like this. And again, because we're subdividing in groups of 2s, it's still a straight feel groove. And if I were to convert this to MIDI and open this up into Piano Roll Editor, you'll see that all of the notes snap to 16th notes on the grid. And then we've got a few quick 30 seconds on those doubled notes. Everything's perfectly on the grid. So again, a straight feel groove. So what makes a straight feel groove different than a swung groove? Well, let me show you. So I'm going to open up this same pattern here, and I'm going to go ahead and pull out these doubled notes. So I'm just going to pull these out and just stretch them out so they're straight 16ths. Okay, so I took the rest of them out off screen. So now I just have a straight 16th note groove here. Now, what you can do is you can select all of these notes, set the time quantized to a 16th note. Nothing's going to change because all of the notes are already quantized to a 16th note. But what you can do is you can add swing here. Now, in the newer versions of Logic, a swing of 50 is no swing. And as you pull this over to the right, it's going to shift every other 16th note over to the right. So it functions like an offset function. And the further over you go, the more swing you're applying. Now, eventually you pull it so far over that the notes start to overlap. That's not really swing. Swing is typically going to be between, above 50 all the way up to about 70. Like 70 is really hard swing. So I'm going to play this at 50, and then I'm going to slowly bump up the swing so you can hear what this does. In particular, it's going to affect the hi-hat and the kick. So again, here is the straight feel. And then the swing feel. So what a 16th note swing means is that notes that land directly on the downbeat, here, 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 and here, and then eighth notes, here, 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 and here, the eighth note subdivisions, those are going to stay right in place. But your 16th notes that are on the upbeats, here, 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 and here, are going to be offset based on the swing value that you give it, and this gives it a swung groove. This just gives it kind of a cooler feel to it, almost like a more relaxed feel to it. So that was 16th note swing. Let's check out another type of swing. I'm just going to start by building a really basic 8th note pattern with no extra 16th notes. Just like that. So this is a straight, really boring 8th note groove. Now, in the step sequencer, you can click this I button here, and you can actually add swing to the entire pattern, and you can choose whether you want your swing to be on the 16th notes, like we just did, or on 8th notes. So as I pull this up, you're going to start hearing that swing on the 8th notes this time, instead of on the 16th notes. And we can also do stuff like this. I'm going to switch this up to 32 steps. Now, so you can see this in the piano roll, I'm going to take this back to 50% swing. So now it's straight 8th notes again. And I'm going to convert this over to a MIDI region. And indeed, you will see that all of the notes snap to 8th notes on the grid, and the 16th note subdivisions in between are no longer used here. I'm going to go ahead and just change this to an 8th note grid, just so you can just see the 8th notes. And again, if I select all of these notes, I'm going to set the swing back to 50 to start. If I select all of the notes, quantize to an 8th note, nothing's going to change because it's already quantized. But as I pull the swing over to the right, you'll see every other 8th note gets shifted over and gets pushed off of the grid. It gets offset from the grid. Now, what's interesting here is if you change the grid from an 8th note or a 16th note to /12, this changes the grid to a 8th note triplet grid. So again, if I go to 50 swing here, you'll see that this note's in between the grid here, the grid lines. And this is because when you switch your grid from 8th notes or 16th notes, which are dividing in 2s and 4s per beat, this divides each beat into 3s. So here's the first note, the downbeat, 2, 3, beat, 2, 3, beat, 2, 3. So instead of like a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a feel, like the straight feel groove, This is like in threes: 1 2 3, 1 2 3, 1 2 3, 1 2 3, 1 2 3, 2 2 3, 3 2 3, 4 2 3. But again, I have to apply that swing. Now, the thing that's different from triplet, a triplet groove, which I'm going to show you next, and swing, is that typically swung notes are not directly on the triplet grid. Like if you pull the swing up to 66, yeah, that's going to put every other eighth note directly on the grid line, and you're essentially going to get a triplet beat that sounds like a swung beat. With swung grooves, that swing is generally not that strong. You typically pull it back a bit, because the way a real drummer would play this groove is more like this than the notes being perfectly locked onto the grid. Okay, so that brings us to our last type of groove, and that is the triplet groove. So there's a couple different ways you can make triplet grooves in your DAW. You can change your time signature, and you can work in 6/8 time, which has 6/8 notes per measure, and it's counted 1 2 3 2 2 3 1 2 3 2 2 3. So it is subdivided in threes. Or you can use 12/8, which gives you 12/8 notes per measure. So 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3. So again, subdividing in threes. In DAWs, I tend to just prefer to work in 4/4 time, and I just change the grid to a 12th note grid or an eighth note triplet grid, and that's just the way I work. I just make sure that all of the notes lock into the grid lines rather than being slightly off the grid like with a swung feel, because it'll give us a completely different feel if everything's locked into a triplet grid. We can do this in the piano roll, or we can do this with a pattern in the step sequencer. If you do this in the step sequencer, you're going to want to change the groove of the entire, or the grid of the entire step sequencer, the step rate, from 16th notes over to 8th note triplets. And you'll see now the beats are divided into threes, but we've got too many notes. So we need to change this to either 12 or 24 or 48 steps. So here, what I can do is I can do something like this. Or I could even make this a 4 on the floor, but like a triplet 4 on the floor feel. Pull up the tempo a little bit. I'll go like 110. So the kick and snare is moving at the same rate as a straight feel. It's just, instead of subdividing the beat into twos or fours, we're subdividing into threes. And you can even use your note repeat here to add in some extra little rhythms just to make this a little more interesting. But the overall groove is still a triplet feel. And then, just as I did before, I'll convert this over to a MIDI region so you can see it in the piano roll editor. Again, when I'm working with a /12 grid, that means we have 12 eighth notes per measure, and you can see all of the eighth notes line up with that triplet grid. There's no swing offset or anything like that. So all of the notes, except for those note repeats I added in, are lining up perfectly with the grid lines. So there you go. That's an explanation of straight feel grooves versus swung grooves versus triplet grooves. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. As always, thank you so much for the support, and thanks for watching.